The Kingdom of Prussia had been one of the first nations to go to war with France in 1792, at the start of the French Revolutionary Wars. Despite having had 11 years of peace to prepare for a conflict, Prussia was not ready for war. The Prussian army was no longer the military machine that it had been in the days of Frederick the Great and now suffered from several deficiencies. The Prussian army was divided into 3 armies drawn from across Prussia. Prussia's main weakness in 1806 was its senior command structure, which included command positions being held by multiple officers. The army's mobility was slow, artillery was often poorly handled, and the Prussian muskets were among the worst in Europe. The confusing system led to delays and complexities that occurred over a month before the final order of battle was prepared. Another obstacle facing the Prussians was creating a unified plan of battle. The main commanders were old and experienced, yet refused to adapt to this new way of warfare. Prussian plans became mere reactions to Napoleon's movements. By contrast, Napoleon's Grand Army was perhaps the most modern and efficient fighting force in Europe. Tempered on the battlefields of Ulm and Austerlitz, it was comprised of hardened veterans and commanded by some of the most talented military officers of the era. The French infantry was, in the words of Chandler, flexible, quick, and intelligent, the cavalry imbued with a fierce courage, and the artillery gunners were at the peak of their form. Under pressure from his wife, King Frederick William III of Prussia sent an ultimatum to Napoleon, demanding the withdrawal of all French troops across the Rhine. When the French emperor failed to respond, Prussia formally declared war on the 9th of October 1806, beginning the War of the Fourth Coalition. The declaration of war was made hastily and recklessly. Frederick William had not consulted his ally, Tsar Alexander I of Russia, before issuing the declaration, meaning that no Russian soldiers were available to support Prussia. The Prussian army was divided into 3 forces. The main army of 65,000 men was led by the Duke of Brunswick, while a secondary Prussian-Saxon force of 45,000 was placed under the command of Frederick Louis. Command of the Third Army of 35,000 men was split between Generals Ernst von Rützel and Gebhard von Blücher. And this force was left to guard Westphalia and Hesse. Since the Prussians had made it obvious that they were preparing for war, Napoleon was able to get into position before the official declaration. On the 8th of October, the Grand Army crossed into Saxony, guided by light cavalry squadrons under the personal leadership of Marshal Joachim Murat. The leftmost column reached the town of Saalfeld, and they were warned by Napoleon to expect a strong enemy force. Here, there was a force of 8,500 men commanded by Prince Louis Ferdinand, nephew of the Prussian king. Hoping to prevent the French from crossing the Saale River and interfering with the movements of the larger Prussian-Saxon army, Prince Louis decided to hold his ground, even though his 8,500 men were outnumbered by the 13,000 men in the French column. On the 10th of October, the Battle of Saalfeld began when French General Louis Gabriel Suchet's division came under heavy fire as it emerged from the woods. Bloody fighting raged throughout the morning until 1 p.m. when the French started to gain an advantage. In a last-ditch attempt to turn the tide of battle, Prince Louis rallied his squadrons for a cavalry charge. But he was killed in hand-to-hand combat. The loss of Prince Louis Ferdinand, as well as nearly 1,000 Prussian-Saxon casualties, was a massive blow to Prussian morale. The main battle commenced on the morning of the 14th of October 1806 on the grassy fields near Jena, modern-day Germany. 40,000 French troops under the command of Napoleon marched on the 55,000 Prussians who were gathered in the fields near Jena. The first movements of the French army were attacks on either flank of the Prussian lines. This gave the supporting army in the center time to get into position. The skirmishes had little decisive success. At that time, Marshal Ney had completed his maneuvers and had taken up position as ordered by Napoleon. However, once in position, Ney decided to attack the Prussian line despite having no orders to do so, a move that proved to be almost disastrous. Ney's initial assault was a success, but he found himself overextended and under heavy fire from Prussian artillery. Recognizing the distressed salient, the Prussian general ordered a counterattack and enveloped Ney's forces. Ney formed his men into a square to protect all their flanks. Napoleon recognized Ney's situation and ordered Marshal Jean Lannes to shift from the center of attack to help Ney. That action left the French center weak. However, Napoleon deployed the Imperial Guard to hold the French center until Ney could be rescued. The rescue worked, and Ney's units were able to retreat from the battle. Although the French were then in a troubling situation, the Prussian commanders did not take the initiative to push at the French weakness. It was at that time, around 1 p.m., that Napoleon decided to make the decisive move. He ordered his flanks to push hard and try to break through the Prussian flanks and encircle the main center army while the French center attempted to crush the Prussian center. The attacks on the flanks proved to be a success. With its flanks broken, the Prussian army was forced to withdraw and Napoleon had won another battle. In total, the Prussian army lost 10,000 men killed or wounded, had 15,000 prisoners of war taken as well as 150 guns. The French suffered less than half the number of Prussian casualties. Jena was not the only battle to be fought that day. Near Auerstedt, 20 kilometers to the north, Marshal Davout's Third Corps was marching southeast to join the fight at Jena and attack the Prussian left flank. Instead, he unexpectedly encountered Brunswick's main Prussian army, which had been withdrawing north toward Leipzig. Davout was outnumbered, possessing only 27,000 men against Brunswick's 64,000, while Marshal Bernadotte's First Corps, which was supposed to have been marching in support of Davout, was nowhere to be found. He decided to hold his ground for the time being. At 7 a.m. on the 14th, General Etienne Gudin's division was passing through the town of Hassenhausen, accompanied by Davout himself, when it encountered a Prussian division commanded by Brunswick's second-in-command, Friedrich Wilhelm von Schmettau. The French quickly formed a square. They held off a series of Prussian cavalry attacks led by Gebhard von Blücher. The French held their own until 9:30 when General Louis Friant's division finally arrived on their right flank. The Prussian infantry took longer than expected to get in formation, allowing devout precious time to set up a battery of 12-pounder cannons to the north of Hassenhausen. The Prussians under Schmedo finally attacked at 9:45. But the famous iron discipline of Devout's corps held fast. The Prussians were slaughtered in the crossfire between Devout's two divisions, and Schmedo himself was badly wounded. At 10 a.m., Brunswick was shot through both eyes as he led forward a regiment of grenadiers. He was removed from the battlefield, but the wound was mortal, and he died weeks later. At 10:30 a.m., a fresh division under the Dutch Prince of Orange arrived to reinforce the Prussians. But at the same time, Devout was reinforced by his 3rd Division under General Morin. At 11 a.m., Devout noticed the Prussians were close to breaking and ordered a charge. This broke the Prussian line, and Frederick William ordered a withdrawal. The double battle of Jena and Auerstedt was a decisive French victory. At Auerstedt, the 3rd Corps had lost around 7,100 men against 15,000 for the Prussians. The defeat of the Prussian army was so complete that it ceased to pose much of a threat to the French advance. The Grand Army mopped up the remaining Prussian resistance and captured Berlin on the 25th of October, with Devout's 3rd Corps given the honor of being the first to enter the city.